Their escape from the Santa Ana jail terrified Orange County and riveted the nation. The three fugitives were caught after a week-long manhunt. But how were they able to escape? Will there be changes at the jail? And what fate awaits these prisoners now? Next on Inside OC. Inside OC is brought to you by 5 Point. 5 Point is an independent real estate development company with assets under management across California. 5 Point is a proud sponsor of public television and community programming. Hi, I'm Rick Reiff. Welcome to Inside OC. The spectacular escape from the Santa Ana jail of three inmates charged with brutal crimes ended with their recapture after a nerve-wracking week-long manhunt. Fortunately, no harm to them or anyone else, although it was a close call. But the story is far from over. It's now time to figure out what went wrong at the jail and what's going to be done about it, and what does the future hold for the three recaptured inmates. And on a happier note, OC's economy is looking strong. Is it time to celebrate, or are there clouds on the horizon? Well, here to discuss both of these stories, criminal defense lawyer Robert Weinberg, past president of the OC Bar Association, Ashleigh Aitken, and journalist and head of the broadcast journalism program at the Dodge School at Chapman University, Pete Weitzner. Welcome.
Welcome.
So, Robert, before we get into the details, I want the viewers to know you have an intimate involvement in this story. Explain. You're representing...
I represent Kyle Handley, who is a co-defendant in the underlying case for the most notorious of the escapees. What happened was a fellow by the name of Hossein Nairi was arrested after a very interesting odyssey that took him from Iran to the Czech Republic, and ultimately extradition through John Kerry, the Secretary of State, and high-ranking officials of the Czech Republic to get him to the United States. And ultimately, he escaped from the Orange County jail. I've got Kyle Handley, allegedly a co-perpetrator of the underlying kidnapping, mutilation, and torture case.
Right, and so he's one of the guys that was Nairi, who has been referred to as Hannibal Lecter, the notorious movie villain, so this guy's been charged with him. So this is a bad guy you're representing.
Well, I mean,
Allegedly.
Allegedly. You understand that there is just a mountain of evidence that only on the margins affects my client. My client asserts his innocence absolutely in this case. This is what they call a classic circumstantial case.
Okay, and we're going to get more into that because given that the three have been recaptured, what does their future look like? We're going to talk about that. But first, Ashleigh, it's astonishing. This is a maximum security facility. There hadn't been an escape for many, many years. Do you wonder, how did this happen?
Well, I think that prisons and jails are built to be broken out of. I mean, they're only four walls. The harder, you have, there's no such thing.
No, they're built not to be broken out of.
You build me a jail, there's going to be someone in there that can get out of it. But what I think is interesting is this jail was built in the late 1960s. They had a break-in days after it was open. So even when it was at its state-of-the-art facility, there obviously are problems in the way that it was set out.
Well, let's working the kinks out if it happens right after it opens. Well,
I think that what we really need to look at is, what can we do now with this facility? I don't think we need to really look at the building, the physical building itself, and say, how can we make this stronger? There's other things that we can use in today's day and age, not just increasing the amount of sheriffs and staff that we have at the jail facility, but actually starting to use technology. I mean, they had quotes in the paper that the jail had just recently turned over from VHS tapes to digital. And I think that's really a testament as to what strains that these jail sheriffs are working under every day. Well, anyone that's had a baby knows that if you try to take a newborn 5 feet from the door of a maternity ward, you will have all of the hospital police on you within 30 seconds. Why can't we do that with prisoners?
Okay, so Pete. By the way, you're the only one on this panel who has had babies. You've had 3 of them, but I do know.
Not physically, but you might have.
I'm
you've
trying
been
to
there.
follow the metaphor, but it's a little hard.
All right,
to
yeah, it's hard for us, but I think we get the point. Okay, but Pete, and as Ashleigh says, this is an old facility and all that kind of thing, but still, all right. Yes, it needs upgrade. The grand jury warned about it, but what I'm wondering is, do you think any heads are going to roll? I mean, was there, beyond the facility, I mean, there was a long gap there. These guys had like 16 hours before anybody realized they were gone. What do you think about that aspect, that there's possibly human error involved here too?
Pretend to be a jail management expert, you have to deal with the hand you're dealt. Built in the early 60s, long corridors. As we've all learned, if we didn't already, inmates have rights. They have rights for movement. They have rights to get trained in language education, which was a factor here, right? So they had the visitor who may have provided some help, but you have to operate within those parameters. And these are the alleged accomplice, for instance, of your client. Yes. These are bad actors, and a maximum security jail. So the fact that we have outmoded, video surveillance. That it seems like I believe there's supposed to be 3 mandated, perhaps, head counts, and there were only 2. Like you say, warnings from the grand jury.
People asleep at the switch.
Could this jail be modernized? And is it probably I'm guessing overcrowded? Yes, but so I think, and knowing the record of Sheriff Hutchins now went to her 8th or 9th year, fairly redoubtable for her record. Certainly, processes will be changed. Whether there's management changes. Maybe a good likelihood.
Robert, you have spent time in that jail, and I don't mean serving sentence, but you have clients. You're a criminal defense lawyer, so you know what it's like inside that jail. So kind of explain it to us. I'm thinking, Shawshank Redemption or something, where you've got, what I see in the movies. You've got these empty corridors and guys with bars, either screaming or being quiet behind bars. Is that the way it is?
I will tell you, at 2:30 a.m., after the discovery of the escape, I got a text from the prosecutor, Heather Brown, who's an excellent, hardworking, dedicated public servant. And the text was, Nairi and 2 others got out. My first thought was, that's impossible. I've been in that place. I don't see how anyone could break out of there, but these guys are clever. And then I found out there were 60-some in one particular mod or room. And then I could see how there could be fights that were staged to make noise such that the perpetrators could saw without being detected.
Because that's one of the things I was wondering about. How do you, and there's a lot of people saying, how do you
do that?
saw out of a place without being hurt?
Right, and how did the bed sheets not go missing? How many bed sheets does it take to rappel down 4 stories? How long had they been missing? Wouldn't you find out when you're doing your analysis of the various beds? We're missing sheets.
That sounds like human error, if you will.
I don't know, and it's very tempting to hold individuals responsible. I just don't know.
Yeah, one of the things they said is that even with, when they are doing the inventory for the sheets, is that they're having other prisoners doing the sheet count and the count of all the necessities that they're being handed out. So it's not like they're being paid and have a stake in the game. They can do the best sheet count, they can do the worst sheet
and
count.
If they're conspirators,
they're still going to break. They're still going to jail.
If they're working with the individuals, it can get done.
The old saying back in my days of an auditor, you can't audit collusion. Now, you ought to be able, because there is going to, the escape in New York, there was some collusion. You remember that story? But my question maybe to the 2 of you, to our 2 attorneys here, is I'm wondering if there's been a chilling effect on, you can't audit collusion, but you use jail informants, right? And what we've seen with the DA's office, did that perhaps have a chilling effect on their ability? Clearly, some of the other inmates, they've been charged, knew what was going on. Is perhaps in running the jails, perhaps the sheriff's department taking more of a hands-off, because that's become now a gray or difficult area?
I seriously doubt it, Pete. It seems to me that they would have a compelling reason to find out if there were any plans to break out of there.
And that's all you. That's your due process.
And there's absolutely no risk to the sheriff, so I assume they had that in place. But you can't stop people who are corrupt from being corrupt.
Right.
And plus, I think I think the jailhouse informants, the people that were the snitches, were being offered something on the back end. Here, if you don't know what's happening, they're not going to rat on somebody that they're going to be potentially sleeping next to with two eyes shut at the end of the day if they're not getting anything in return.
Now, of course, we are finding out more. We're finding more out about this whole story by the hour. So perhaps by the time this airs, some of our questions will have been answered. But I'm intrigued by your idea that this may have been a somewhat large-scale collaboration here among some of these people to make noise and things. I mean, that could implicate a lot of prisoners.
It could. Rick, let's face it, there's a sort of camaraderie of prisoners. There's an identification they have one with the other. So they would just probably cheer if someone broke out, even though...
They cheered at the quasi-arraignment, was it yesterday or the day before? They cheered him.
He's something of a hero in the dark side community. So I don't find myself surprised that would happen. I think the enforcement, or I should say the prosecution of the collaborators, would be nearly impossible to say who did it, who actually covered up, if that's what happened. But I'll raise an interesting question, at least it is to me. The ESL teacher, who has become infamous, if you will, by the internet dissemination of her photograph and the story, is supposed to be teaching people who are not fluent in the English language. Nairi is a graduate of the Fresno school system. How did he engineer getting into a class to learn English as a second language? I think
Well, there's a bunch of, now that you brought up Nairi again, lots of interesting things about him. So tell us a little. This is a guy who was discharged. He was a Marine, and then he was discharged. I mean, he's got an interesting history.
Interesting is a nice way to put it. He actually was a deserter, and he was booted out of the military. He again sold himself when he was sentenced up in Northern California for a vehicular homicide of one of his close friends. He sold it as, I served the U.S. I'm a serviceman, so I deserve a break. And unfortunately, no one in the court system checked to see that indeed he'd been discharged because of desertion. So he sells himself well, and he must have done something to, in some way, harness the ESL teacher to his own interests. He must have some sort of charm.
Now, so there was that DUI, and then this other case that came up, this gruesome kidnapping and attempted murder. And let's talk about that, because that's where your client comes in. What is your client's defense? Because he was, according to the charges, one of the other two people with Nairi who's there when this guy they're trying to extort. They think he's hiding money, and they want to torture him, so he'll tell them where the money is. And they pour bleach on him. They set him on fire. They cut off his private part, and then leave him for dead on a road. But he's not dead.
Well, my client vociferously denies that he was there. The way the case matches up, and the viewers can figure for themselves what the defense would be. My client's truck is used to surveil and to clean up the mess. My client's address is used for the delivery of the surveillance and GPS equipment. The way it looks is that Nairi was the general here, and he manipulated two different women to do his dirty work for him. So when the trial actually takes place, we'll find out what the evidence is. But it looks as though Nairi, as the mastermind, just as he was able to break out of jail and harness other people to his interest, was doing the same thing in the underlying
So you're
case.
saying your client's defense is that he wasn't even at the site. Now he is he's an alleged marijuana dealer.
No doubt about it. He was a grower. He was a growing associate of Nairi, but that doesn't make him a criminal on the level of life without possibility of
Now,
parole
what's
for this
interesting
act.
is Nairi's, I guess it was his then wife, now his ex-wife, who was involved in this case as well. And you seem to have some issues with her.
Well, obviously I don't have any personal issues with her, but here's the thing. You have someone who states to the police, I am in law school, but I don't trust the police. They lie. It appears from the discovery that I have, that means all the documents, that she misled them on multiple occasions. that she participates in the making of poison hamburger to destroy a dog that might have been guarding where they believe the money was. She was present, by her own admission, at the installation of the camera equipment that was set across the street to surveil the victim, to hunt him like some sort of animal prey. And then suddenly she's the best friend that law enforcement has. I think her credibility is something that deserves exploration.
How does it hurt how does attacking her credibility help your client?
My client is accused in her statements to authorities of having played with the blowtorch that was used in the torture, and also to having been present in the installation of the camera equipment. So she directly points my client out as a perpetrator.
So she's been cooperating with go ahead, Pete.
I'll just say real quick on this topic of conversation, Robert, I'm curious, your client awaiting a jury trial.
Yes.
I'm sure you've thought about how might the escape of Nayeri affect your client?
It's a great question, and I'll give you my
But
first...
Pete, stop asking questions. This is
what he does.
The lawyers are flanked by journalists.
He can't help
The lawyers are
himself.
flanked by-
He can't help himself.
The lawyer's supposed to be
But
asking
it's a
the
good
questions. That's
question.
what's fun.
It's a go ahead, answer it. It's a good
going
question.
there, Rick. I know. I'm sorry.
The answer is that my theory has always been, since I've looked at this evidence, that Nayeri was the puppet master and everyone else was a puppeteer. And now that I see how he acted in connection with his escape and the aftermath, I don't doubt that he could set up my client, because a lot of the damning evidence was found on the premises of my client's home. My client has 2 vehicles. Nayeri borrowed one of them to surveil. The Newport Beach Police Department did a phenomenal job investigating this thing, and they found my client's truck had been parked at or near the residence of the victim on multiple occasions. But Nayeri had access to the truck, and it's always someone else's truck. The camera equipment was in his wife's truck. He's clean. Do you understand? So this does help my case.
Okay. Well, anyway, and you're obviously a good representative of your client. If any of the other attorneys take issue with what you're saying, Robert, I invite them to come on, and they can look at their cases too. So Ashleigh, there's a political aspect to this, and that is mainly around Sheriff Sandra Hutchins, who very interestingly kind of took the bullet right away, said this is a bad day for law enforcement. She was very upfront, very open with the media. She let a camera crew come up on the roof and show this is where they got away and everything. What do you think of the kind of the open approach she took and her whole way of handling this issue?
Well, I think that the sheriff, the reason that she doesn't get into so much trouble as some of the other big political leaders in Orange County do, and so often do, is because she is very open. She's okay saying, mistakes were made. We're going to be looking internally. We are going to be looking at our procedures and processes and seeing how we can improve. And these are the facts that we have as we know it. I think what other people do and what gets them in trouble is they start finger pointing. They don't want to take any personal responsibility. They don't want to say that they did anything wrong. So then they start pointing the finger to the rank and file. And she is very protective of her sheriffs. I think she's very protective of the respect that the county gives her. And she knows that citizens are okay with you making a mistake. Everybody makes mistakes. It's how you handle it after that, without trying to lie, without trying to cover it up, and without trying to shut everybody out. I think that's why she's really successful in the position that she holds.
Pete, as a journalist professor, do you agree with that approach?
Very much. I've sat in this very chair, like I mentioned, like 9 years ago when the indictments came down at Sheriff Corona. We had of course, this being the plum of sheriff's jobs in the nation, a budget of close to $1 billion in a low crime area, upwards of 40 people with resumes as good as the sheriff's was. I've been, I believe, a captain in Los Angeles, that on paper were superior. From that moment forward, you could have won a lot of bets that she would have been selected sheriff, which she was, and had the really excellent record that she's had in many respects. And this is a great example. The accessibility was very clinical. We all knew, like, at some point, you've got to get to the point, which she said, I think she's quoted in today's LA Times saying, this is embarrassing. But that was later. Right now, it was all about, here's what happened, and we've got to get these guys. Yeah. And so maybe she's also gotten, in this case, and perhaps in past cases, a little bit lucky. Yeah. We all did. This was a dangerous situation. That nobody got hurt on the outside, no peace officer, and these guys, they got all three of these guys back. Good luck, good police work.
Right. Talking about social media played a role in all of this too, and I'm wondering, is it just going to be impossible for anybody to escape anymore and stay escaped because everyone's got a camera and they're texting all the time?
It's an old saying in law enforcement, when in a situation like this, when people escape or commit a crime, we don't catch the intelligent ones, we catch the dumb ones. I think maybe now they can catch some of the intelligent ones too, for what reason you just mentioned.
And I think this is a really positive thing for Whole Food shoppers. I sometimes give them a hard time, but they were at
They're
Target.
They're not as bourgeois as they've been cast.
These guys were at Target where I shop, and nobody found them. But they go into Whole Foods, and those people were on them.
You're talking about the escapees going, yeah, they actually had some good taste there.
Yeah, way to go, Whole Foods.
What's got me is, as soon as this happened, I thought they're going to Mexico.
Right.
And one would ask, why, if they're so clever, did they go to San Francisco? Why? My theory is they did not know how much of a head start they had.
They didn't realize that it would take 16 hours, which is, of course, as we speak, we're not sure. Maybe we'll learn more very soon. How in the world could they have gone undetected for 16 hours? So you're saying if they had known that, Nayeri might be back in Iran.
He's in old Mexico, that's for sure.
Well, the method of the non-head counts, clearly it'll be one of the processes that they changed. But talking to a number of reporters who worked the case, not a one among them, all did great work, thought that all three would be caught, brought back safely with that incident.
I'm telling you, baby LoJacks on all the prisoners.
Maybe. Why not? We've got the technology now, right? So why not? Probably because some criminal defense lawyer will say it's a violation of rights. Right?
Are you talking about a bracelet?
Yeah.
They'll find a way to cut it. They'll find a way.
That sounds an alarm. I'm telling you.
Well, that might sound an alarm. That's good.
Okay. Anyway, listen, on another topic quickly here, the OC economy. Jobless rate down to barely over 4%, and 47,000 jobs created in a month, and more jobs created in 2015 than any time since before the dot-com boom of the late 90s. So, why aren't we breaking out the champagne, Pete?
Well, we're a subdued people in Orange County, number one. No, it was empirically, this was the best year, like not just going back to 2008. Going back to 98, 99, better than almost 50,000 new jobs. Good jobs, too. A lot of these jobs, you know what the biggest thing, we all know leisure and hospitality is growing. The Convention and Visitors Bureau just put out the numbers. Hotel rates at an all-time high, upwards of 3% higher in visitors. JWA, top 10 million passengers, first time. Right. But construction was the big engine in 2014, 2015, of all sorts. Infrastructure, residential, commercial. Those aren't just, and we love engineering jobs, programmer jobs. We're getting plenty of those too. And leisure and hospitality is a growing area, maybe not. But those are good paying, non-1% jobs, right? So it all combined for a terrific year here. Two concerns, you say, why aren't people celebrating? Incomes here, we don't operate in a vacuum, are still stagnant. So as home prices have gone up, thank God for low mortgage rates, but affordability, again, is becoming a big problem. I know we all have anecdotal stories. I have a few friends in the last 12, 18 months, if they were in the market to buy a home, either bought in the Inland Empire or came off the market because they just can't qualify, can't do it.
And I think that what's interesting is we talk about breaking out the champagne, and that's the champagne, people that break out champagne, that's a certain segment of Orange County society. I'm really concerned about the people that can't survive and that aren't, either looking for a job or have been unemployed for so long, they're not even counted in the numbers. I read that, payroll jobs are up in California and are almost at pre-recession levels, but Orange County still hasn't. And payroll jobs amongst the 5 major sectors haven't gotten up to pre-recession levels. And those are the jobs that we were talking about, are the people that really need the most help.
Yeah. Robert, your thoughts on this?
My thoughts are that when the home prices are so high and the wages and salaries are increasing modestly or not at all, there's something wrong. And people will leave. They will go where they can buy a house. I just got back from Utah, and I was staggered with what you could buy for $250,000. and how much the cost of living was, not only from gasoline, but from pharmaceuticals, from restaurants. This is an expensive place to live.
It is.
Yeah, but it's always been. I mean, or it's that issue of affordability is one that Orange County continues to grapple with. The numbers suggest, though, that things are getting better. In fact, growth. Your colleague Essie Adibi at Chapman referred to it as fantastic. 3.2% growth in wages.
Right.
Or in jobs, in jobs, right?
3.2% in jobs.
In jobs,
and
jobs.
Spending was up over 3%.
Yeah, and so I mean, just objectively, these are good things. But I'm saying it doesn't feel like. Remember back, Ashleigh, you're too young to remember this, but you know, back in the late '90s, early aughts, I mean, things were humming, and everybody could pretty much agree with that. And anyway,
I just think I was raised by a stay-at-home mom. And I think when I look amongst my friends and people in my generation and younger, it is impossible to buy a home, be a stay-at-home mom, and have a husband that is a school teacher or a fire person, or
and unfortunately,
and that's tragic.
Ashleigh,
but that also goes to all
you
of
get the last
California.
word. That's it for now. I'm sorry, folks,
Yeah.
we're out of time. And but thanks, good questions, Pete. That's it for now. Thanks to my guests, Robert Weinberg, Ashleigh Aitken, and Pete Weitzner. You can watch this show and past shows by going to pbssocal.org or rickreiff.com. You can also catch our shows on our post-show open mic chat or on YouTube. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And thanks for watching. We'll see you again on Inside OC. Inside OC is brought to you by 5 Point. 5 Point is an independent real estate development company with assets under management across California. 5 Point is a proud sponsor of public television and community programming.